Hi there. Welcome to Intuition, Your First Sense. This week, we are going to talk about that important aspect of life, which is the integration of your soul and your human self. Not an easy task to take on consciously. It's been happening since the very beginning of you as a blink of light. So don't worry, you've been doing it all along. When you assign consciousness to it, though, it does take on more of a weight, more of a playfulness too, but also more of an understanding of the continuity of life. It may cause you to question what you're doing with your own life and how you could be living it in a more fulfilling way for you. And the integration of our soul and our human self is exactly why we're here. I mean, you have both, but we're not meant to walk around as these divided beings. And anyone who suggests that you be completely enlightened all the time is misleading themselves as well as others. And there'll be a follow-up episode on enlightenment. And what the heck does that mean anyway? For this one, though, I want to talk about the times where you're feeling disconnected or feeling overwhelmed or feeling like you don't know which way to go or can't get out of your own way. Any of these sound familiar? There are so many times in our lives when our soul is just more evolved. It's a little bit further ahead in the line than we are. And it moves circumstances in our lives forward, but we may not have a consciousness about that. And you may not have an awareness. So it brings about stress and anxiousness and doubt and all these things. So I want to help throw a little bit of information in here that might help you when you are feeling any of those things and, other apprehensions about life so that you can have a more fulfilling view of it and perhaps even an understanding and maybe an excitement about what is happening. Because the more we understand our wiring and the more we understand the process of this eternal life thing that we get to experience, the more fun it is. And the less you take it personally, you actually stop being a Q-tip. Quit taking it personally. Life is going to happen. We are going to expand. There's just actually no way out of it, because even if you leave this lifetime, you're going to go into soul form, non-physical, and you're going to be expanding there too. So I feel like, as a very pragmatic person, I feel like, well, then let's just look at it and let's see what we can do with this so that we can make it more fun and so that there's less need for coping with substances or avoiding our lives or emotions or any of that. So like I said, there are going to be times when your soul is moving more quickly than your circumstances, and the collective energies that are always working in our benefit place opportunities in front of us that we didn't think we were ready for. And your subconscious mind may be ready to move forward, but also hesitant to move forward. And it may delay the recognition that there's a new way of being or new opportunities or plans or places to go that are laying out in front of you. Our soul intuitively understands that we may have to change our vocation. We may have to change our relationship. Where you're living may have to change in order to be part of a growth process. And it doesn't always feel great. And sometimes you may feel eager to move, and other times it may be, holy moly, I am not ready for this. And some of this may be even moving up in vibration and elevating your own frequency to a place where you no longer can tolerate gossip or eating meat or some products that you had been using in your home. Maybe you become sensitive to them and you're like, what's going on? Well, that is your whole vibration raising And you may just put it to something physical. And yeah, sometimes that happens. There's a chemical reaction. But a lot of the times I find it's the people that have a very high vibration that have a difficult time with additives in their foods and preservatives and like scents and anything added in that creates a resistance in their system. So some of the chemical sensitivities, yes, we are overwhelmed with chemicals in our world. There's also a course here where a part of it where your vibration is shifting and you do become a little bit more sensitive to things. That's part of the fun and part of the challenge. So when life is moving and it's like not necessarily a next stage of your life, but a next experience of your life, it may feel challenging, and you could make it more challenging by resisting the movement, by not recognizing that there are forces working in your benefit. And one of those forces is your soul. And it's aware that you came here to learn something, and it does not hesitate to encourage us, push us, guide us, sometimes full face forward into situations that you may not be ready for. I remember when I was leaving the VNA, I just went in to talk to my supervisor about evaluations and what the schedule was going to be for the next year and what was going on. And out of my mouth flies the message, well, I'm not going to be here all year. I've already decided to leave. I had not had a conscious conversation with myself about that. I had a mortgage. I had kids. I was the primary income in our family. I was definitely the ones that got the kids to school near where I worked. I was like, what the heck is happening? And that was a very clear example to me that my soul was saying, okay, enough of this. Yes, you could stay here in this very easy for you job and keep putting in the effort, but it didn't fill me up. It didn't make me happy. And it wasn't as much fun as doing the readings or working with people that I was doing on the weekends. So my soul was like, okay, you're going now. And I really had no choice. Granted, at the time, my supervisor would have been fine if I just said, I don't know where that came from. But I knew somewhere inside of me that I had to follow that, or I was just going to bump into apathy about my job or a health issue or more of a struggle for the staff to be heard, which was a big issue for me. And they just weren't being heard. So sometimes the soul knows and believes in you so much that it's going to kick you out of the nest. And this will also include, the people in your life. Friendships come and go. I often work with people who feel like they have to hold on to someone that they're no longer resonating with. And my question to them is, why? If there's been effort and if there's been conversations and you're still not meeting on any kind of level, why do you feel the need to twist yourself inside out and to even act like a different person when you're with them? And that's not in alignment with yourself or who you are in other places. And you're like, why? When we're granted multiple lifetimes, but there's not an infinity of time in each lifetime. I think we should be conscious about where we're spending our energy and in what relationships we're in. And again, often your soul, it's like a little tap on the shoulder saying, does this feel good to you? Do you feel like this is in your best interest? And it will come through to you as, oh, they drive me crazy. Or I can't believe that we just had to have that same conversation about their belief systems and how I'm living my life so wrong and what I believe is wrong. And those are all examples of your soul saying, come on, kiddo, do you want to spend your time here? Or do you want to move your own energy and your focus and maybe your butt into relationships that are aligned with you and that are people that will accept you for who you are? And we have this tendency to just hang on to those that are not serving and feel like we have to be in there. And I know it's the fear of jumping, and perhaps there's a little bit of fear of being alone or being lonely, but if you connect in with your soul, that loneliness does not exist. And I know that sounds easy. And I also know that it's difficult, but I also know it's part of why we're here. So again, that pragmatic side of, well, I don't understand why you would avoid it. If you're eventually going to get there, you may as well do it now. So other examples of your soul moving forward and you hesitating may be that you keep bumping into the same patterns that you've created. So the same people will show up, the same type of people will show up in different bodies. So you think you found this great friend and you connect on all levels, but you find out they're just like that friend that you ended the relationship with. Well, you may have ended a relationship, but did you change your own knowing and perception and value of self that you want to then connect with these people who see you, who hear you, who, will even hold up a value of you that when you're not serving yourself best, they say something. You will always be encouraged by your soul to be surrounded by those that love you. And you have to start that line. And you can use those around you to help that. But your role in others' lives may be temporary as well. Maybe you were just there for whatever the message had to be or whatever the time had to be. And when I look back at some of the friendships I've had, some of the relationships I've allowed myself to stay in when they didn't line up, I have gratitude actually for those. And I have a few where I've had to have the conversation of, we do not resonate. I can care about you, but I am, again, not going to sit around and just gossip or just talk about entertainment crap or, be so fixated on the latest trends and my life is over if I don't have those pair of shoes. I just can't do it unless it's the ultra sneakers, because I will never move off of those as long as they continue to provide. But you may be temporary in someone's life because maybe they had to hear that that's not how I work. I will not be surrounded by those who are racist or who are judgmental or who don't have a kind heart towards others. I just won't do it. And maybe they needed to hear that. And maybe they need to hear it 500 times. But you don't have to be that person who says it 500 times. And at first, it may have seemed favorable, but then you recognize that, oh, no, this is not jiving. And the quicker you learn that, I would need you to pat yourself on the back. The faster you recognize, oh, I thought this was going to be in alignment, but it's not, you will feel a sense of peace and harmony within yourself because you're listening and increasing the connection with your soul's knowledge and your human's ability to move through it. There's an app for that. I created an app for developing intuition. I created an app that will help you connect with community. And I created an app where you can take courses at your own leisure and then attend live events with myself and the rest of the amazing people that are connecting within the Vicky B app. You can find this app in Google Play. You can find it in the Apple Store as well. I do hope that you head on over there, download it. Yes, there are in-app purchases, but there's also plenty of content that is complimentary. Thank you so much for being interested in this, and I hope to see you within the app. So just last month, I had been spending one day a week at a co-working space, and I had been doing that for I think it's about 7 or 8 months. And I have a lovely office at home, but sometimes you just need to see people on those days where I'm not meeting with people. And it's been wonderful for me to actually experience other people doing their work all day. I realized last month that it wasn't lining up with what I want right now. So it's a lovely space, wonderful people who run it. When I went in, though, nobody talks to each other. Like nobody even looks up from their computer. Nobody interacts with the exception of the people who are running it. They're lovely. And I'm sure the people working there are great and they're just busy, but that doesn't line up for me. It didn't make sense for me to keep paying money to go sit in a booth by myself. I'm like, I can just go hang out at Barnes and Noble. It might affect the budget a little bit because I'll probably buy a book or two, but or I can go to the library where there's a peacefulness energy and, maybe just a softer environment. And I'm so grateful I did it. I'm so grateful to the people like that and that run it and everything. And also knowing that this is a space I could use to teach at is great. My soul said and was telling me this for a couple months, and I ignored it because I just need to see different walls. And I'm like, no, it's perfect. They make good coffee. It's got good Wi-Fi. It's a safe environment. And I'm like, no, it just doesn't line up with where you are now. It worked great in November. It no longer works in August. So, I let them know and I could still drop in. But this is an example of the soul preparing and being able to listen. It's not always, cataclysmic things. It's not always relationship. It's what feels right to me and what is going to be serving of me. And yes, on some level, I was like, why am I spending $65 to not have a conversation with another human, not make eye contact? Hey, at least if I stay too long at Barnes and Noble, they're going to come over and talk to me. So I want to encourage that willingness to hear that even when things seem to be flowing along, and you know what, especially when things seem to be flowing along, there will be a little nudge saying, okay, this seems like a good time to grow. And to move on. And moving on can be defined in so many ways. It can be emotionally moving on because you have a realization about yourself. Be spiritually moving on. Perhaps you realize the belief system you were raised with, some of it no longer aligns, so that you seek one that works for you. Maybe it is in relationships and you go to therapy so that you can move on from the idea that you're tied to your childhood in a way that you can't be present where you are today. And it may take a while for this momentum to kick in. And you may instinctively know that you're growing and that you require more from life. Wanting more from life is a message from the soul. We will always be growing. So when people say to me, I don't know who I am, I get excited because just when you know who you are, there's going to be something else that shows up that says, oh, here's another level of knowing within yourself. And do you want to explore that? And it's important. I mean, that's a big reason people work with me on a coaching level is because not only can I see where they're going intuitively, I can then help to create the plan that feels safe because it can be unnerving. And I have always said that when someone feels overwhelmed, you look at your circumstances and do we logically have to say, you are working too much, you are not resting, you are not drinking enough water? Like, we have to look at that stuff too. But most of the time, I find that someone feels overwhelmed because their soul has grown and they're not allowing or they don't know how to allow their human self to line up with that, to give permission to brilliance, to step into power, to know your own courage, any of the descriptors that may be out there and that you may come up within yourself. So if you're resisting that growth, it's going to be painful, extremely painful, because it's like having your butt dragged over those spike things that, when you drive through a garage and it says, do not back up, you will pop your tires. Well, it's kind of like having your butt dragged over that when you're resisting your own growth, when you're resisting a new awareness about yourself and getting excited about that. I just did a session with someone who has said that she's reached a certain level of sobriety. And I said, oh, that's so exciting. And she looked at me and she's like, I didn't think of it as exciting. And I'm like, well, it is. Clarity that'll come to you, how happy your cells will be. You listen to yourself that it was no longer serving you. And then you had the courage to walk through it day in, day out. That's exciting. And just that little shift, because her soul had already grown to this place where it didn't feel like the human self needed to keep avoiding emotions. They could embrace it. and said, well, let's do it this way. And then I pointed out to her how many changes she had already made in her life, because if you go looking for the evidence of success, you will then have more courage to move forward. And once we looked at that and I pointed it out to her, she's like, I didn't even consider that. I'm like, I know. And these are all the things that can help you to unwind that feeling of overwhelmment, or, in this case, reverse that feeling of, oh man, this is going to be so hard to get to 6 months, to get to 9 months, to get to 3 years. And I said, well, let's feel what it would feel like to say to yourself, in 3 years, we just hit 3 years sobriety. And I can't even describe the glow that was on her face. And the shifting of, I'm excited about my growth, I'm curious about who I am, is the soul talking to you saying, we kind of rock. It would be great if you showed up in this appreciation. And that's going to give you the forward momentum to take you from your current situation to a place that you instinctively, intuitively know will be spiritually uplifting. It will be comfortable. It'll be nurturing. It will be intellectual. It will be stimulating. And then once you arrive in that, shortly after, those misgivings of growth will vanish. Like, have you ever started a new job and you think, I'm never going to get this. I'm never going to get this. It's too hard. There's too much to learn. There's too many steps. And then about 3 weeks, 4 weeks in, you're like, all right, we got some momentum. We're doing this. That's the same exact experience of the soul saying, okay, I'm up here. Are you coming? Are you coming? Are you coming? Are you coming? And your human self going, I don't know. That seems a little scary up there. And then once you get there, you're like, I know how to do this. This is pretty cool. I've got some muscle memory. I fired some neurons, and now I have some neural pathways to depend on. So with that, you'll find in that willingness to grow and to integrate the soul with the human self, you'll have subtle changes that show up in your values, in your goals, in your emotions, but also your ability to flow through life and to see that not everything is personal. Yes, life is going to have some undulations to it. It's going to create some opportunities for you to grow even more, but you will have created also the skill sets, spiritual muscles, if you will, to support yourself, because you recognize that, perhaps you had to separate yourself and move away from your family of origin to know who you are energetically and to maybe line up with your now family, or as I call them, my soul family. Sometimes, actually very often, it's not sometimes, very often this is part of the process, and there's so much guilt associated with it that sometimes people don't even move when recognizing, wait a minute, my soul is calling me over here so that I can be with others, contribute to others in a way that I feel whole, that I feel lit up. And it's not a judgment on those that I'm no longer associating with. It's a choice, because, they could come along too. They could raise their vibration. They could hear you. It may not always be crystal clear to you. And it may be freaking scary. And you may be unsure. You may not even know the whys or the hows. I'm actually okay with that, because you can get caught in the why so much that you never actually move. I had that conversation with someone recently where she's like, why do I keep doing this? Why is this happening? Why? And I said to her, no, we're not going to look at the whys anymore. We've looked at every direction of the why we possibly could. It is no longer serving, and I'm not serving you by keeping us wrapped in this story. You're just going to take some actions. You're going to move. You're going to decide to do this or decide to do that, and you're going to follow through. Because I know when she does that, on the other side of that is a greater belief in herself and some clarity that will help her ask questions that are deeper than why. Because why, it just keeps you locked in a circle. So the clarity that comes from forming a question of, how could I move myself forward? What do I want? How do I want to feel? Instead of why? I mean, think of the 4-year-old asking you why all day long. It's exhausting. And so the understanding that the clarity will bring you to a place of excitement about growth. And you start scanning the horizon for really great things. What does that feed into? Well, it feeds into the law of attraction. And that allows things to show up. And as one of my nieces said to me last week, this shit works, Aunt Vicky. I'm like, it actually does. Thank you. I'm going to quote you. So I just quoted you. When you're willing to ask yourself, where is my soul guiding me? Where is it trying to take me? And where am I resisting that growth? You don't have to judge it, but you can create a plan from there. So moving from one point to another, if you feel strongly driven to do so, is the integration of your intuitive self, your spirit self, your non-physical self, your soul self, all the names, right? To the physical self, your earth self, your body. It merges it all together. And then the letting go of what's no longer serving becomes easier, but so does the connecting to what feels lit up, what feels right, what feels heart, mind, spirit, body, all of it, and delivering you into a life, or you've delivered yourself into a life that fits for you, not for someone else's perception of what your life is or not. So the integrating of your intuition and your soul is bringing logic and energy together. And we have to do both in order to have an experience that is less stressful, more fun, more enlightening, more opening, more playful, more depth, more connected, more aligned, all the mores you can think of. So that the idea of resistance only comes in when you're talking about the bands in the gym. It doesn't show up anywhere else. When I taught spin class, I would not use the word resistance. I wouldn't say turn up the resistance, because people experience enough resistance in their life. I would say turn up the belief in yourself. Hit that dial, turn up the belief. I believe in you, turn up the belief. And it started as something quirky, but then it caught on. And I'm grateful that I understand resistance can be something that builds our muscles, and that including our intellectual muscles and our expansion capability, and that life happens and there is resistance in life. It's fine. But if you're actively in resistance and avoiding your own brilliance, you are not serving yourself. So integrating the soul self with your human self means also understanding that soul self is just loving who you are and wants to experience everything in this great big playland of earth existence. When you're feeling that overwhelmed, when you're feeling the resistance in your life, and when you're feeling like you're not serving you, I want you to pause, take a deep breath, and ask, what is my soul showing me? There will be clues, but you have to open up your eyes to see the clues. And if you need any help, you can find me at vickybaird.com, and I will see you in the next episode. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to Intuition, Your First Sense. As always, please like and subscribe to this podcast wherever you are listening to it. Leave a review and take a minute to share it with a friend. You can find me all across social media at Coach Vicky Baird, and you can book a virtual session with me from wherever you are in the world at vickybaird.com/booking. That's VICKIBAIRD.com/booking. Thank you again, and see you on the next episode.